Well, hey there, YouTube. So, you noticed I'm in my basement. Where's the Harley, you say? Well, it's too cold to ride a Harley. And this is for my homeboy Mark from work. And he's getting his first AR. And I was talking to him the other day and asked him if he knew how to break it down and clean it. And he wasn't quite sure. He's seen some videos, so I thought I'd put this together. I went out the range the other day and shot my Colt M4. And it's basically the same process. If you don't know, Colt owns the M4 stamp. So that's the only difference between an AR and an M4. It's just the naming. So this is for Mark. Basically what you want to do, there are two portions to your AR. You have a lower receiver, which is the hand grip and the trigger assembly. And then you have the upper receiver, which carries your bolt carrier and stuff inside there. So the first thing you want to do is check to make sure that it's not loaded. You know, that's obviously a given. And then you want to depress the trigger so you don't have your hammer in it and in a back position and accidentally mess that up. So you have two pins. I usually do the first one in the rear, which brings down to where you can get to everything. And since I'm going to be cleaning both sections of it, not just the bolt carrier, then I will remove this upper portion from this pin, which is a little harder to get to. It seems that the lower wants to come out a little easier than the rear pin wants to come out a lot easier than the front pin. Alright, so now I got that off and they just come apart. So we'll mess with this later. This has very little cleaning. The buffer tube I hardly ever mess with at all. I really just look at the function of the hammer, and we'll get to that here in a bit. So we'll just probably put this aside. So the upper assembly, you're only going to mess with two basic functions. You're going to turn upside down, start pulling back on your on this, and then take out the bolt carrier group. The charge handle is what I'll refer to. So you want to take your charge handle out also. And then what I do, because I recently shot this, everybody uses a different compound. I use the ballistol. I like it a lot. It's worked well for me for years. Some people use CLP. I believe that's what it's called. It's the same process. So what it does is it cleans and it lubricates. It's an all-in-one, multi-purpose. So first thing I'll do, if you can't see, we'll spray some of this down inside the barrel and get all that crap out of there. And we'll just kind of let it soak. It's not a big deal. It's gonna sit there for a while. So I'll just spray a bunch of it down in there and kind of like toss it down to make sure all that crap gets down in there. There. Once it starts coming out, then I'll just set this aside and just kind of let that work its magic and break up any of that crap that's inside of there. So now with this is when I start putting on gloves because it gets pretty messy. Now everybody does things differently as far as the lubrication of the bolt carrier group, and we'll get to that here in a second. But the primary thing is the cleaning of it, which is all the same. First thing you want to do, there's a little pin right here that holds in your firing pin. Take something small and sharp. If you have a .223 ammo, you could put it in this little divot here, and it's just enough to release this little cotter pin. So you got a cotter pin, and I hope you can see okay. It's kind of dark down here. This is where I clean, but I can see fine. but my GoPro is not the best one in the world. It's only the white version. So release the cotter pin. Take out the firing pin. You'll see mine's pretty dirty because I shot a couple hundred rounds through it the other day. And now for your bolt, there's a little thing right here. You'll twist this 90 degrees and pull it out. And then your bolt comes off. So that's the bolt carrier group disassembled. So you got the cotter pin, firing pin, this little thing that holds the bolt in, and the bolt. And this is the assembly part. Now what I do, you don't want to use anything that's going to leave a bunch of cottony fabric all over this. Like paper towel gets all twisted up in there and bunched up. So I just have an old shirt, one of my wife's shirts that she was going to take to the yard sale or Goodwill or whatever, and I just use it for cleaning. So first thing you want to do is just kind of wipe it down and get some of that lubrication, grease or oil or whatever it is that you use. And just kind of get some of that stuff off. We'll work more in depth with this here in a minute. But this just makes it so, you know, it's mostly clean. Get your bolt. Let's get some of this crap off. Get your little pin, kind of clean it up. A little thing that holds the bolt. I can't remember the name of this top of my head. And then your firing pin. It's kind of working your magic on this. Just clean it up. Okay. So now to really clean these, get some patches, break some out, and get your solvent. I use the hops powder solvent. I've used this for many years. It's done me well. Pour just a little bit in here. You don't need a bunch. Put that off to the side. Kind of fold up your patch a little bit and dip it down in here just to get it wet. And just kind of get some of that solvent off. Get down in here. See, it's taking off a lot of that junk, that crap that collects. Take another one. Get just a little bit on here. You don't need a whole bunch. And what I do, everybody kind of does this differently. I'll take the end of an old toothbrush, kind of wrap it around it, and I get it down inside this hole where the bolt is. See, that's where the bolt was, and it got off a bunch of that crap in there. Take your flashlight. Looks like I got some more in there I need to work with here. And if your toothbrush is small enough, you can get the toothbrush down in there. A little more. I also have actual brush for this kind of stuff to really got a piece in here. got a little bit in there. It's kind of being stubborn on me. That's better. Then once that's cleaned up, take a rag, wipe off any of the excess solvent that is just lingering on there. And then use your brush and get down in these rails. Clean up that. Just to get some of that stuff off. Then take your flashlight, just make sure you can see down in there. And it never hurts to take a Q-tip. Put just a tiny bit of solvent on it. Get down in there. See, I still have a bunch of crap down in there, which is what I'm working on right now. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Now, take one more cleaning cloth and try and get as much solvent out of that bolt area as you can. There, bolt's clean, or the carrier is. This part's pretty simple. This little pin thing that holds the bolt on, you just kind of wipe it off, along with that pin. So on the bolt itself, same concept. You're just wiping off any of the residue. So mine doesn't have any buildup, any carbon buildup on here. If you did, it's the same concept. You can just kind of dip this in here and just kind of scrape off any carbon that would have been on there. But my gun's fairly new still. I've only had it about a month, so it's not too terribly bad. And then the last thing you want to do is clean your charge handle up. And it's just, you can just wipe it down. You don't need any solvent on here. Just clean it up some. Okay, so now we'll move to the upper part. And what I like to do, I use the bore snakes. Some people use the rods. I don't like having a rod because you push it through, and then most people bring it back, and you're just bringing all that crap right through your barrel again. So when you push it through, you're going to have to unturn. You have to take this off, reassemble it, push it through, and the bore snake is nice if you don't have one already for any of your other guns, because it goes down in through this weight. It already has your bristles. I don't know how well you can see this or not. You can definitely feel it. It's got the bristles built in, and then all this, cleans it, and you can put a little bit of oil at the end and oil it up. So this is pretty simple. I stretch mine out for a second. And I really hope you can see what I'm doing here. And this just goes right down the barrel. And the hardest part is getting it down. And I just kind of shake the gun until it falls off. And then you just push it through. See, there's those cleaners. And I usually do this about 2 times. That seems to be the magic number for me. Your second time through, it comes down a lot faster and easier because it's wet now. And just push it through. So now, if you hold the barrel up to the light, and you're not probably going to see this, but this is mainly for me, I can see that the rifling inside of there is nice and clean, no obstructions, and that's exactly what we want. So now you can take your rag, clean off any of that excess solvent and lubrication, take you a Q-tip. This is called the bird cage, or muzzle suppressor, whatever you want to call it. And just kind of get down in there and get some of that excess lube out of there. And then the part, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, right here where this piece makes contact, you just want to take your Q-tip and kind of clean that off too, because it's going to have all kinds of garbage in there. See? Kind of take your finger and swap it around there a little bit. Get some of that crap out of there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now I've seen YouTube videos of people cleaning their guns, and their ARs and M4s and whatever they have, and they're spending, you know, an hour deep cleaning this thing, and you got to remember that these were made for the military, and they are designed to run with a certain amount of dirt and work flawlessly. You do not have to spend 5 hours cleaning your AR or M4 because it doesn't do you any good. A little dirt or debris is not going to hurt at all. Just make sure that, you know, it looks nice. Another thing I do is where the bolts carrier meets the receiver, I kind of just take my finger in there and clean off any of that excess grease or oil or whatever that you use. That looks good. Alright. So now we'll work on lubricating this upper, and then we'll go ahead and reassemble it. So for lubrication and assembly of the upper and the bolt carrier group more specifically, you do not lubricate the firing pin. This is designed to run dry. If you lubricate it, it's going to attract a bunch of debris from the carbon and everything, build up, and it's going to cause you problems. It will not fire correctly. Do not lubricate this. Some people lubricate this cotter pin. I do not. I don't see a need for it. It doesn't move. These are the 3 things that we will be lubricating, and that's all. Okay. So first, we'll go ahead and lubricate the bolt. There are 2 main portions that lubricate the bolt. You can see where the shiny is, where it actually makes contact. So we will lubricate this section here, this section right here. We will lubricate these gas rings, and then we will lubricate this beveled edge because it also makes contact with other metal parts. The rest of this does not. We'll work with this a little bit before we put it back in. But these 3 parts are the only parts that you need to lubricate. Some people, I was trained to use high temp grease. And there's a reason for that. Some people on their entire AR or M4 will use lubricating oil, gun oil, and that's fine. You know, I'm not going to start dissing on anybody who does their lubrication a certain way. It all works. You know, I have found, or I've been trained, that if you do not shoot your gun every day, which I do not, and you put oil all up in here, and you put it in a gun cabinet with your rifle off the stock, sitting on a stock, all that oil's eventually just going to drip down. So by the time that you go shoot, most of the oil you put on there that you felt really nice about after you got done is gone. Or once it heats up, because these parts get very hot, it's just going to all start to move around, because when oil gets hot, it turns into like a more watery material. And grease, it doesn't. It stays where you put it. So I was trained to use grease, and you don't have to use a whole buttload of it. This tube will last you longer. It'll probably go bad before you use it all. So just take a little, this is where your gloves really come in handy. Just take a little bit, don't need a lot, and put a little bit right at the end where it makes contact. Put some on the gas strings, because you want to keep those lubricated. And then, like I mentioned, there's a little beveled edge right here where it meets the inside of the carrier. So we'll reassemble it. Now this only fits one way. It has two holes. One hole is smaller than the other. I don't know if you can see that or not. You will need the bigger hole to match up right here. So we'll go ahead and put this into where the hole is. Now the pin that holds on the bolt, you can see where it's got some shiny also. And this takes a lot of heat. So you will put a little more lube than I needed on there, but that's all right. So that, you'll need to lube that up too. Drop it in. And then twist it 90 degrees. So there's your bolt. The firing pin only goes in one way. You'll slide it down right through the middle. Like I said, make sure you do not lubricate this. Just make sure that all the carbon's off of it. And then verify that you can see through this little hole and put the cotter pin aside. So now you should be able to move this back and forth, and that firing pin does not come out. That means you have done this successfully. Extend the bolt. You can move the bolt back and forth. Extend the bolt all the way back. Make sure the firing pin's pushed forward. I'll set this aside for a second. Charging handle. Some people opt not to lubricate their charging handle, but you want to lubricate at least the sides. This is where it makes contact with the inside of the upper receiver, and you can kind of see some scratches. Like I said, this isn't this is a new gun, a new weapon for me, so it's not going to have a lot of wear anyway. But you can see some play here where the charging handle is going back and forth inside the receiver, and it's the same basic concept. You don't need a lot of grease, just a little tiny bit, and just kind of lube it up a little bit. It just extends the life of your charge handle. You know, these things aren't expensive anyway. I opted to change mine nearly immediately because I didn't like the stock one that it came with. So I got a Bravo company or a BCM. And I do really like it a lot. We can talk about that later. So to reassemble this, you're going to take your upper receiver and turn upside down. And inside of here, there is two little notched grooves right at the beginning or the end of the receiver or the upper. And you're going to line up the notches upside down to where it fits in there, and then you're able to where you can push it forward. You're going to leave it back just a little bit. Now for lubricating, I probably could have done this beforehand, but before I did the charge handle. Lubricating the bolt carrier, you do not lubricate the entire thing. There are only 4 main points that make contact with the upper at all. There are these are rails right here, and on each side of this gas block. And that's the only places that you will, some here. Those are the only 2 places, or only 4 places that you are going to lubricate. Because those are the only places that make contact with this area. Nothing else even makes contact with metal. Only those 4 places right there. And then I will put a little bit right here on this star thing, and I can't remember the name of it yet. That meets up with the barrel. So again, you don't need a whole bunch. ARs and M4s do like to run what's called wet, which means that they like their lubrication, but you don't need to put the entire jar of lube on this. It's completely unnecessary. So add quite a bit, not to where it's overflowing and all that crap. And if you chose to, you could put, this grease or oil or whatever you're doing on a Q-tip and run the Q-tip along here. As long as it has grease on it, that's really all that matters. And like I said, we'll put just a little tiny bit right around here because it does make contact. And this does not need to be overflowing with grease, and you don't really need it down in those grooves, just enough. You don't want any grease impacting where inside of here where the firing pin comes out at. Alright, so now this is greased. That's all that you need to do. If you use oil, that's fine, it's your prerogative. But you do not need to oil or grease any of this section up in here. You might want to grease this part here just a little tiny bit because it does make contact as well. But like I said, you don't need a bunch. And now we'll put this back in. Like I said, put it upside down. You want the bolt fully extended. And you're going to basically just line it up inside of here. And then push them both in together. So that's done. That's it for the upper. Now for the lower receiver, I don't use any solvents on here. At least I never have when doing this in the past. I will use some Q-tips. And just kind of clean up inside of here, make sure there's not a bunch of carbon or anything, and there shouldn't be. If you don't use a bunch of grease or oil, it's not going to collect the carbons. or if it does, it's going to be very minimal. But I will take the hammer, knock it down, kind of clean up any of that. See, I got some carbon on the hammer because I do grease that just a little tiny bit. You just want to make sure that it's kind of clean in there. Get just a very small amount. I'm talking very minute. That's even more than you need. And just kind of grease this up just a little tiny bit. Just put a little on there, just very thin coat, because it does make contact with the firing pin. Now, very important, if there's one thing to remember, it's this. Do not pull the trigger and let the hammer hit without hitting the fire pin. You will damage your lower receiver if you do that. So hold on to the hammer, pull the trigger, and then slowly bring it up. You will damage it. Very important. And then for your buffer tube, I normally don't take this out. I never really have. It does not get dirty, but I will take just a very small area and just kind of put a glaze on it, because the bolt carrier does meet this area. And then, Mark, you are basically good to go. So what we will do is put it back together. If you want to put a little bit of either oil or grease along these pins, it doesn't hurt. Mine are looking pretty good. It just makes them slide in and out a little easier. So what you're going to do is you're going to just line up everything. And then push these pins in. Oops. Well, maybe. Oh, there we go. Just like that. And take your rag, take a clean side. Kind of clean off anything, any excess crap you got on there, your webbing. And if you have a scope, I do have optics on mine. I have found that when you clean it, you take them off. Most of them have quick disconnects. And then last thing you want to do is test it and just charge it back. Get that grease worked in there. I can feel that it's in there pretty good. Take a couple of shots with your trigger down, charge it back, make sure that the trigger resets like it did, and you are done. So Mark, I hope that helped you out some. I try not to make it too terribly long for you, but I hope that you enjoy your new AR, and that maybe you take something away from this video and learned how to properly clean and lubricate it. So if you have any questions, or if anybody has any questions, you can drop comments, or if you know me in person, then feel free to talk to me. And I love talking guns of all types. I also took my Glock out to the range, so I might do another follow-up video on that too, just for the heck of it. So thanks for watching, and if you like the videos, then like and subscribe. My channel is mostly about Harleys, but I think I'm going to start doing some gun stuff too. So thanks a lot. Bye bye.